to fully complete an Airbnb listing, down to the last little T's and the I's that get dotted. This is so important because even the little things can affect your ranking. Once you've published a listing, you're only halfway there. Airbnb has moved a ton of stuff to the back end because they wanted to make the front end easier for people to create a listing and get online. Airbnb wants more hosts, so they made the front end like just a few clicks and you're up. But it hides a lot of the specific details that you need to put in your listing now. So on the back end, you need to go in and make sure that every single text box is filled out. Things about your place, about the neighborhood, getting around, other things to note. You need to make sure that your checkout times and check-in times are right, that your cancellation policy is strict, and that you've got a cleaning fee and a weekend fee. And if you have a couple listings, you can have what's called Pro Tools, and you need to activate Pro Tools. Just have a couple of listings, and the hack here is to go to airbnb.com/multi-calendar, and it will force load all of the Pro Tools features, including a multi-calendar. But then when you go into your listing, now that you have Pro Tools, you can go into pricing and set a 3-day discount and a 4-day discount. And trust me, so many hosts don't change their prices at all, let alone think elegantly about a 3-day discount in order to get ahead in the market. These are the types of things that you need to know better than your competitors to compete. Understanding all the tools available, having a completed listing, so that way Airbnb says, you know what, this is going to be one of the best listings to show, and they give your listing a real shot at the beginning. Airbnb gives you an SEO boost for the first month that your listing is created, but if you incorrectly create the listing and have things like vertical photos and don't have text boxes filled out and don't check box all the amenities that you have, you just won't get shown as much, and thus that boost that you get the first month kind of gets wasted, and you fall into the middle of the market and you'll get less bookings. That 1 month boost that you get, you want to use it as much as possible to increase your ranking, so that way from then on out, Airbnb thinks that your listing is interesting. Now remember, Airbnb calls their algorithm for placement an interest algorithm. Make your place interesting and abuse that boost the first month. What I think you need to understand is this is great for small properties, but bad for big, okay? So in the case that you have studio apartments, which a lot of my properties are studio apartments, when we have to pay a housekeeper for extra cleaning, it might be a few hours of cleaning. If we have to remediate the smoke from an apartment, it might take us 3 or 4 hours of extra cleaning and using some ozone machines and stuff like that. This is fine for us because the $250 cap, standard statutory cap on extra cleaning or on this non-smoking violation fee, that is in line with smaller properties. But Airbnb's flat rate approach is largely putting off larger properties. If you have a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom mansion or cabin or just some luxury property on the water, what can happen is if somebody throws a rager and trashes your place, that cap on heavy cleaning becomes a sunk cost because you might have to pay an extra $400 or $500 for a cleaning company to come in and make this trashed party house ready. And with the non-smoking violation fee, again, with a larger property, the number of machines that you might have to use to remediate the air and filter out the air and clean the space, renting that much machinery can get expensive. And the amount of hand cleaning that you might need to do in order to remove the smoke smells, as far as upholstery cleaning, cleaning the walls and stuff like that, can get really expensive too. So the real only cons that I see to Airbnb's air cover is this cap is leaving out the largest properties to really fend for themselves if they can't keep their remediation costs under control. I did do a previous video with a hack that you can use to clean out and filter out, or scrub, you could say, the air in your house for much cheaper than renting expensive equipment. I really do believe that moving forward, because of air cover's cap on the smoking fee, that you should own your own remediation equipment when it comes to air scrubbers or air movers. This video that I'm gonna put in the description or in the corner is an extremely inexpensive way to get your hands on some gear to clean that air. So use something like this in order to keep your costs lower, so you can really focus at $250 per violation on the hard labor stuff, like if it means cleaning upholstery or cleaning walls. Airbnb has done something else that is extremely significant when it comes to air cover, which is the timeline to file. Now, a lot of people were complaining that if they did a resolution asking a guest to pay for some damages, that the guest, in retaliation to that resolution request, would then leave a negative review because they didn't think it was fair that they were getting charged for staining sheets or breaking plates. Well, the host should not have to pay for every single broken dish or plate because they feel hostage to the review. And Airbnb has finally met hosts where they are in that fear. You have up to 14 days to file. You can create a draft. As soon as a guest leaves, you can start uploading photo documentation, getting all that stuff in a row, all that time-sensitive material that you should upload right away anyway, but you can keep it as a draft,
have it in your back pocket, try to get the guest to review you first, and then file the resolution once the review is out of the way. This is extremely important. We've tried to find multiple ways to navigate around this. It used to work, and then Airbnb put a huge kibosh on us about a year ago, where we had to have the resolution finalized before the next guest checked in, which became extremely problematic. So even if other guests are checking in over the course of 14 days, you still can delay that resolution request as long as all of your paperwork, all of your documentation is in the system, like time-stamped, uploaded original stuff before the next guest checks in. You should not have any issues. So best practice is treat it just like the old policy of getting everything uploaded before the next guest checks in, but just save it as a draft. One of the most common questions that people ask me is, how do I know what I should charge per night? How do I first choose a price to charge people? Like, you set a house on Airbnb, and there's really no best practice that 3 bedrooms always go for $300 or a studio always goes for $120. Results may vary city to city, property size, competition. Well, here's something that a lot of you do because you're honest with yourselves when you create a new listing, and by changing this one thing, it'll help you discover a more appropriate price. So now imagine you're creating your new listing. You get to the point where Airbnb is going to try to give you the option of using smart pricing. It's going to ask if you're new to Airbnb or if you've hosted before, and then it's going to ask you how often you'd like to get booked. Now, all of us put as often as possible, and then when it turns on smart pricing on your behalf, it lowers the rate to a really comically low price. What I'd like you to do is write down that comically low price and save it for later, and I'm going to explain here in just a second. Now, hit the back button, do it again, but use that middle option, which is part-time. I want you to notate the number that it suggests with smart pricing for your base price, and like your minimum price and your base price. Write those numbers down again. Then go to the rarely option, the least frequent of the 3, and then write down that lowest price and base price again. So now you should have 6 numbers. You should have your, I really, really want to get booked, I want to get booked part-time, and I barely want to get booked, as your standard numbers, and then the lowest it suggests that you should go. It also includes like a maximum, but we're not turning smart price on, so it is still good to know if your market fluctuates enough where it recommends that you could possibly even potentially triple your rate sometimes. What I want you to use is that rarely number should be your baseline number if you have nothing else to go off of.
You don't only make money on Airbnb with arbitrage from making money from the guest that stays at your place. That's only one part of the deal. You can make money on the front end of the deal by being a good buyer, by working with a landlord that needs you, needs your leases, needs the cash that you can provide them, and getting a deal from them. I like to get 8% to 15% of rent knocked off the top, off of market rate, and I like to go for 2 months of rent for free on the front end, or more, 10 weeks of rent for free on the front end if I can get it. By getting cash for free on the front end with free rents and getting a discount on market rent, we're doing 2 things. The cash for free on the front allows us to take our invested capital and get it back so much faster by not paying the first 2 months of rent. And then by getting an 8 to 15% discount, we are actually guaranteeing profitability on our doors. Because if the market goes for, say, $2,000 a month, but then we get $300 off of the monthly rent, well, then we can put that on the market furnished at a markup, and if we're not having a good time getting short-term rentals, we can flip it to a monthly, and that $300 we got discounted can guarantee us that we could put the furnished version on the market at the same price as regular market rent, and if we ever had to do that, we could still put a furnished property on the market long-term without incurring a loss, right? Which we'd never have to do. We do a lot of monthlies, but they're all profitable. But by getting 15% off of market rate, if we put a furnished property on the market at the same price that an unfurnished one's available, ours will get occupied by a month-to-month or long-term tenant if we absolutely had to. So these discounts are a way to guarantee profitability in our business, and that's largely how we survived COVID, was discounts. And I've got previous videos where we talked about that. And a lot of you know, COVID was really crazy for a lot of Airbnb hosts. There were big businesses like Stay Alfred that closed, and a lot of reasons why companies like Stay Alfred closed is they were burning their cash. It's called a burn rate. When you're a startup, you get a bunch of VC capital, a bunch of rich people give you money to start your business, and you got to go to scale. You burn a ton of cash trying to scale your business. The goal is to get big, become profitable, right? So you burn all this money to grow, then you try to flip all your levers to become profitable, and once you're at scale and showing that you're profitable, then you try to exit and sell the business. That's
a pretty common startup strategy. Well, they ran into COVID. So they were already losing money, running out of cash. COVID hit and they needed to raise $30 more million, and they failed to because of the environment that is COVID. And that's why Stay Alfred went out of business. Where we have always tried to be profitable on all of our properties and get these discounts. And of course, I'm bootstrapping the whole thing. I don't have investors. I don't have a bunch of cash that I felt like wasting because I was using my own money. And so companies like mine, mid-sized companies, smaller companies, we survived largely. Even companies in Philadelphia, which part of our portfolio is in Philadelphia, got hit really hard, but we still survived in the city. One of the coolest things about arbitrage right now is once you go in and invest in a property, you're buying a lot of furniture, and there's something called accelerated depreciation. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment can be immediately deducted from our revenues 100% first year. We do have to keep that furniture in play for 4 years to, of course, catch up to the depreciation because we accelerated it the first year, but it's a really aggressive discount. So you can scale a business and just keep growing and keep growing and keep growing, and any of your profits, as long as you reinvest it into furniture, fixtures, or equipment, furniture for your Airbnb, you don't have to claim any taxes because you're scaling your business.
If you can't get your hands on some good real plants, or you just don't trust your staff to keep them alive, because this can be tough, then fake plants. And fake plants will suffice because, of course, a lot of what we're trying to do is get guests to book, and that pop of green in photos gets guests to book. And even if the plants are fake, when somebody is in your living room, if everything is just kind of like drab and like gray, then it's just not as welcoming. But that pop of green, even if like you do a black and white theme or a mostly black theme, that pop of gray just really stands out and really makes the space alive. And it does lead to people enjoying your space because it feels more like home. Because when people live places, they have things like this. Hotel rooms don't have plants, do they? So this is a way to kind of cut out your hotel competition and do something that they just never do. OG conversation, but I think it always needs to be said, because did you know that 1 out of every 3 travelers, they don't drink coffee. They do decaf or tea, which decaf isn't coffee in my opinion because it doesn't get amped up for, YouTube videos. But when you set up your coffee station should include decaf and tea. These are products that you need. I like setting up this really cute coffee station that looks good in photos, and I'm leaning more towards using pour-over stations with an electric kettle. This is another product that you need, an electric kettle, coffee station or not. And I believe pour-overs are great because they're easier to clean. See, if you think about it, your housekeepers can sometimes miss like dumping out the coffee tray thing where you put the filter in. It happens sometimes, right? It just happens. This is something that can become an error because you have to flip the thing up, and if they don't think about it, they'll miss it. And Keurig machines, people don't clean those. Nobody ever cleans them. They don't clean them appropriately. You're supposed to soak the components. And did you know that like coffee grows some really weird types of mold that are hard to get rid of? And that's nasty. I worked as a barista at a Caribou Coffee, competitor to Starbucks in the Midwest, and we had to clean those coffee stations, and when they got missed for a couple of days, those things got raunchy. So if you use a pour-over station where it's like the glass container with the metal lid on the top that you put the coffee in, that stuff, it's like disassembled the entire time. You can't miss it. It always gets cleaned, which means that you have by far a less likely opportunity for a guest to discover that you missed something, and the guest will always stay happy because you're preventing an error here by going old school, or back to the basics of making coffee with the pour-over machine. I'm saying this one because you can buy it technically a product, even though it starts as a liquid. We're talking color. You need some paint in your place, my friends. Now the thing is there's so many Airbnbs out there that people go and they do decent, good interior design, but a lot of them are apartments, and no one's ever brave enough to ask permission to change the wall color. You should do that. If you have houses, you can change the wall color. If you own your place, you can change the wall color. If you're brave, or you get a bunch of apartments, you can change the wall color. I doubt the landlord's gonna really say no to that if you're giving them a big rent check. And the cool thing about like fun, bright, audacious wall colors is they just create a different space than everybody else has on the Airbnb platform or on VRBO or Booking.com, which means you get booked more and people just like what you did with the place. Put some color in your space. And if you can't paint a wall color, then hang some stuff, big stuff that's colorful. You could do tapestries, you can do big pieces of artwork. I mean, the painting on my wall I did myself, it's like 10.5 feet wide. You can do these things, and some of them are simple to do. So get some color in your space, have some fun, and make the place a home. Make it like a fun home that people want to stay in, take some photos in, work in, yada yada. Another OG one, a king bed and multiple types of pillows. If you have a king bed in your listing and you list in your title/description that you have a king bed, you get more bookings because Airbnb does not have a search box for king bed. You can't select what size bed you require yet. I can't believe Airbnb doesn't have that as a search filter yet. The moment that it's alive, you guys should put it in the comments, by the way. Just be like, yay, king thing's activated, but it's not yet. Now, by doing this and then having multiple types of pillows and not slouching on the price point for your bed, you're gonna make sure that people have the best possible sleep. And the most important part of an Airbnb listing is the quality of sleep. People are going to spend the night, right? If they weren't spending the night, why would they book your place, right? So just think about that. I like having these bamboo gel pillow things, and I like having down feather or down feather alternative pillows. So I've got two different types of firmness for my pillows, which means that different body types, different sleep styles, back sleepers and side sleepers, both can be happy with their choice of pillow. And that is an important distinction to do. If somebody wants to future date their reservation, they cannot. That becomes your policy. Never push any dates towards the future, even if it's a day, even if it's 2 days into the future. Never push those days around, because you don't want a guest modifying the dates to take advantage of your cancellation policies and then game you for a refund by bypassing your strict cancellation policy. We tell people, well, we can give you a credit. We have a cancellation policy on these dates. You're reserved on these dates. We're not going to alter those dates in the future. But if you do decide to cancel these specific dates, we can give you a travel credit for those other future dates, right? And so we give them 50% off of the future dates that they go and book. And then this way, they still get some of their premium back, but there's no gaming us to be had. Another alteration scam, and this one's fun. People will book for a couple days, and then they will alter to try to get like a monthly stay out of you, right? So they'll show up, they'll book for a couple days, the card will go through for a couple days, they'll check in, they'll take possession, then they'll change their form of payment to some fraudulent form of payment that Airbnb can't catch in time. They alter the reservation to be longer than a month to get the calendar to give them a monthly stay plus, and then the credit card won't go through. And Airbnb will then go, we're having a hard time collecting money from this guest. Now, what'll happen is Airbnb will freeze up and say, if the guest doesn't pay, you're going to have to kick them out. Airbnb no longer takes responsibility according to their language on their accounts. They no longer take responsibility for that guest, and then that guest now has an active reservation where they did not pay, and then you've got to kick them out. And unfortunately, if you find a professional squatter, and this is their intention, then what'll happen is they will try to use the fact that they've got this multi-month reservation with you as proof that they are a tenant. This has rarely happened, but it is a legitimate scam that has happened before, so be careful. I do, just to give you more context, I do find that people who pay good money for a reservation tend to not be the type that squats. In this case, if somebody prepaid for like a monthly stay and their form of payment went through for their first month, those aren't the people you need to be afraid of. So a lot of you avoid monthly stays because you're afraid that somebody's going to squat. But if you think about it, let's say the rental market for monthly rentals in your area is like $2,000 a month, right? Just say there's no lease, non-furnished, $2,000 a month. But your place is listed at say $3,500 or $4,000 a month because it's furnished, all bills paid and stuff like that. Well, in that case, somebody who can afford you for $4,000 a month is highly unlikely to default on the next month. The world that has to deal with evictions and squatting tends to be more that like $800 to $1,500 a month range, right? Not the $4,000 a month range. So a lot of you who are afraid of monthly bookings, don't be. But be aware that this alteration to be month-long after somebody just checks in for a couple days, that should be a red flag. Tell them they have to create a completely new reservation is what you should do whenever anybody wants to have a short-term stay and then they want to extend it to a long-term. Tell them we can't do that with this reservation. We cannot turn a short-term into a long-term, but you are welcome to 2 days from now book a long-term reservation. And once the payment clears for that long-term reservation, we'll give you the cleaning fee back since you're going to be paying for 2 cleaning fees. How about that? And that way you protect yourself from the loophole of the software. So if you have any questions about cancellations or alterations requests or have a fun story to share about a cancellation, it's a fun topic. We've had a bunch of really weird stories, and maybe one day I'll tell you them because of course that's what this channel is for. Thank you as always for watching this video, guys, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.